Hi everyone, welcome to End Zone Scoop. I'm Liz, and with me are my wonderful co-host Shona and Dayna. Now, for those who are listening live, don't forget you can use the chat function to ask us any questions or share any thoughts during the show. But before we get into it, ladies, it's been a little while since we've seen each other. So, how are you both?
Sorry, I was just tweeting so everyone could.
I'm good. I'm not getting so much heartburn now because I think the baby has moved down a bit, but I am still getting acid reflux, which is horrible.
Yeah, that's not fun.
I know, not much longer, and we get a Shona baby.
Yeah,
I know.
New little Seahawks fan.
I already said this to you guys, I think, because like Andy's family are Cardinals fans, and I'm like, we don't let shitbirds in this household.
Right, sorry. It's not the way it works. We have full reign over this child.
We do.
So excited. Well, yeah, things have been good for me. I've been kind of running all over, doing some vacations. Got to go to Seattle. Not for a football game. I know. I went for a soccer game because Sporting Kansas City was playing the Sounders and the Seahawks. When I booked that trip, I'm like, I had a 50-50 chance that Seattle would play in town that weekend too. Sadly, I lost that bet. It's the weekend. It was week 2 when they were in New England, but that was okay. It was still just nice to be back in Seattle and see a bunch of my buddies from there and my other podcast people. So that was really fun. But yeah, so it's been good. It's been just kind of a busy fall. It's still hot as hell here too. It's October. Yeah. It's supposed to be 90 degrees for us tomorrow, which I don't know what that is for you guys. I think it's like 30 or something for you guys, but it's insane. And yeah, it's like stupid hot and it's October. I want my sweaters. I want my boots. I want everything.
Well, come to Scotland. It's freezing.
Yes,
I'm going to.
It is so cold. Like honestly, it literally just like skipped autumn and went to winter.
Ah, see, I wouldn't mind that so much. I'm cold.
It went from like blazing sun a couple of weeks ago, and now it's like 9 degrees.
Yeah, I'll take it. But football has been quite interesting this first 4 weeks.
It has, hasn't it? Like,
yeah,
we also always try not to get too Seahawks chatty, but like I don't think we need to talk about this. I suppose shocked in a way. I kind of thought this would be a bit of like a development season, new coach and all that kind of stuff. Like I thought we'd be finding it a bit more not so winny.
Rebuilding-ish.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a fantastic conversation yesterday with Camden, who is another Seahawks podcaster. And she and I were talking about, we talked about a lot. We had a really good, deep conversation about the difference between Pete and Mike McDonald and all these other things. But one of the things that we were talking about is how Mike McDonald has been so different than Pete, and yet we're getting such good results. And what is that a reflection of and all that other kind of stuff? But I think that a lot of Seahawks fans really believed that the first 2 games were pretty winnable, right? Like there was the Patriots and it was the Broncos. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those teams. The Patriots have actually been better than we thought they would be, but I just think that people were a little surprised by the whole thing. But then what has happened with Miami and their injury situation, and then to run straight into the brick wall that is the Detroit Lions. I think that I had the Seahawks at 2-2 right now, so I'm actually really happy with 3-1. But that last week was tough to watch, and so it'll be interesting to see how they rebound from that this week.
I mean, I think they would literally have needed like a sign from God on a jet stream of a comet down into Ford Field to try and win that game without most of their defense. Just putting out there. But you gotta love Seahawks Twitter, don't you? They literally like are the biggest babies ever when we lose. And I'm like, well, if you think about it, we were without Leonard Williams, we're out without Byron Matthew, we're without Jerome Baker. Then Julian Love went down in the first half with the thigh injury. And then we did have Kenneth Walker, the third back. Great, love him back. Great, such a good running back, and we really, really do miss him when he's not there. And it was evident with his 3 touchdown performance. But I mean, they're going to struggle if they don't have these top players in the defense, I personally think, because that is how I feel that they're kind of setting up as being more slightly like Pete, being a bit more defensive minded, but the offense is just as good at the minute, which I think is really interesting. What's going on with DK? I can't put my finger on it. 1 week he's hot and 1 week he's not. Like, what's your guys' thoughts?
Go on, Dayna, you go for it.
Oh, Liz is just here.
Questions. I'll say her look pretty.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with DK. I think what has happened with DK is pure game planning. I think that he gets double teamed a lot. I think that the other teams see him as a threat. And the teams that we've played, if you look at their strengths, like one time it's their secondary is their defensive strength. Another one is that then their secondary is horrible with the Patriots. And so he could run, free will at that. So I think that has so much more to do with it than anything like nefarious or anything that's wrong with DK. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I just think it's been just scheming and game planning. This offense has been so good. It's hard to call any of them. And Gino, rockstar.
I was just going to say, because he believes at the minute that he's underpaid. And if you look at the other contracts around the league, you would have to agree with what he's saying. And particularly his performance against Detroit, that shouldn't, he should be like, that shouldn't change his mind at all, because they did lose. But I feel like they were mounting a comeback, and he was setting career highs in passing yards, like during that game where they lost like quite heavily. So if I was DK, I would just be trying to set my own, do a Cam Chancellor that did his own contract one with the Seattle, or was it somebody else? Bobby Wagner. Somebody did their own contract without their agent.
It was Bobby.
It was maybe, Bobby. Gino should just do that himself, because he needs to just be like, I know what I'm worth, and I can see that I'm not getting paid as well as the rest of the league, and I'm putting all these performances out. So, for my money.
Yeah, it is good. He'll get paid. The conversation has been brought up. It's like, we have to give Gino $50 million a year. Who's off man out? So that'll be an interesting conversation for later, I think. But right now, I just think that Seahawks fans should be real happy with what they're saying. I want to know what you guys think of Mike Macdonald. What is your thoughts on him and his coaching staff so far?
I mean, I was excited about obviously I was gutted. Obviously, they got rid of Pete Carroll, but there was some things that were quite exciting about him. I really liked that they got Aiden Durd, the British guy. Was he Dallas, and then he moved over to York?
Yeah, this is his first coordinator job. But yeah, Aiden Durd. Mm-hmm.
So I was excited about that as well. So this, if anything, it's just an exciting change, and kind of just watch and see how it's gone. And I'm saying it's going pretty well so far. Like I can't really feel like I fault it. So yeah.
I don't know. My jury is still out on him a wee bit. I want to like him, but I don't know if I do like him.
He's very different. He is.
I mean, he's not what I'm used to with like how animated Pete was on the sidelines. I just love Pete Carroll, and I know you have to move on. I just didn't see that coming at the end of last season, so I was quite surprised. And then I feel like he's only really coached under Harbaugh's for God knows how long. And I love one of the Harbaughs. I don't love the other ones. I feel like Mike Macdonald is just a mix of them both. I feel like that's where I'm at with Mike.
Mm-hmm. I see so much Mike Tomlin in him. I've said that a couple of times.
I love Mike Tomlin.
I do too. And that's why I'm really starting to warm to him. He's mad. He's angry. He's a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. He's all of those things. And yet, his players love him. That's Mike Tomlin in a nutshell. So.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell like the players are really enjoying playing under him, because it's not the same sort of, it maybe was getting a bit stale under Pete, and you kind of do start to see that creeping into the playing styles. I've said this before, like you see it when Arsene Wenger was at Arsenal, and you've seen it when other managers don't know when, or head coaches don't know when to move on. It was probably the right thing, and I see more enjoyment out of the players on offense and defense.
Yep. Peter, you could not be more right. I love Derek Hall. I loved that pick, though. I was all in on that pick. I was at that draft. I was so excited. And the Hawk Blogger boys had a meltdown about it, except for Nathan, and I loved it. And so I'm glad that he's proving me. Nathan and I are correct on that one.
I feel like you and Nathan are pretty much always correct on stuff, and then the other guys.
I'm going to tell him you said that. He will love that. But the Seahawks aren't the only team doing impressively well this year. We have to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Right?
That's a surprise,
Who
yeah.
knew getting rid of Captain Beige would,
Captain Beige threw for 500 yards last night, so we can't even be mad at Kirk Cousins right now.
I know. Go ahead. Sorry, that was it. Just Captain Beige. Gotta love him.
So the interesting thing about the Vikings to me is I picked them to be dead last in the division. Their injuries preseason were just mounted and huge. They didn't have their new superstar quarterback. Apparently, they didn't need him, JJ McCarthy. Sorry, I hope you didn't lose your job. But I just didn't expect much out of them. There was going to be too much, change. And then all those injuries to very important people. No, Sam Darnold said, no, thank you. He said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And now Sam Darnold has been a pain in the butt to Seahawks fans before because he has a tendency to beat the Seahawks when he shouldn't. But what he is doing and what that coaching staff is doing has just been super impressive.
Yeah. I can't remember what somebody said to me the other day. There was 3 quarterbacks, and it was Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and somebody else. It's like, look what happens when they move on from a terrible offensive coordinator or a head coach. And it is so true. I can't remember who the third quarterback was now. That's going to bug me. It'll come back to me. And it's so true. I mean, they get that free flowing and get to showcase what their talent's all about with a coach who is believing in them and an offensive coordinator is also believing in them. Gino, yes, there we go. Yeah. Thank you. I knew it was. How did I miss out Gino? But I feel like it's so refreshing to see rather than people just writing off these young guys immediately when they don't do well at the first team they're drafted in.
Yeah, for sure. It's you should put up that comment from Graham because it's absolutely true. So Graham has it on there. All Sam Darnold had to do was leave the Jets. Life lesson right there, kids. Amen. Right? Look at the Jets this year. We weren't planning on talking about them, but I am so sorry, Aaron Rodgers. You couldn't save that team. I don't even know what to tell you. Don't even get me started. But yeah, interesting for sure. I do think, that is true. Sam Darnold is a free agent. I think it was just a 1-year contract. So we'll see what happens. If he keeps playing the way he's playing, I think that they keep him and let JJ McCarthy sit and learn. I'm hoping that that's what he's doing during his rehab, but at the same time, you don't know. So I hope that goes very well. I think what's interesting also is that sometimes underdogs go under the radar, especially at the beginning. Now, do I think other teams will catch up and get there? And yeah, I do. I really do. I think the Lions are truly the team from that division that's going to end up winning and going to this. I have the Lions going to the Super Bowl this year, but so I think that will eventually happen. But TJ Hawkinson is coming off of IR. He's going to come back. That's just one more weapon for them. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of turns out.
Yeah, definitely. I think anything it's any given Sunday, anything can change. You just don't know, but I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm excited for that fan base. I think that fan base was down at the beginning of the season and now they're way up.
The Jets trying to slow down Sam Darnold and that Vikings offense this weekend. That'll be very interesting to see how they pull that off.
I think so too. It's interesting. Peter had asked up in chat earlier, he said, if Sam Darnold is all pro or wins MVP, what should the Vikings do? You re-sign him, you keep him, and you pay him because obviously he fits your system. Yeah. And make it an easy contract to get out of, if you need to. That's kind of what Seattle did with Gino this last contract. They paid him. He's still so underpaid, but they paid him, but they made it easy for them to get out of if they needed to. If some reason that they took a nosedive, the Vikings can do the same thing and still pay him respectfully. So we'll see. I think that would be a good thing, especially since you're waiting for this rookie to come in and you don't know what you're going to get out of that rookie. So I think that it's smart to keep him around for at least a couple more years, even if it's a 2 to 3 year contract that you can get out of after one. We'll see, how that works. I think that's a good idea. But
yeah. You mentioned earlier, Dayna, about some of the injuries that we're definitely seeing across the league. Like, to me, it's blown my mind how many big names are out and out for a little while, maybe. What are your thoughts on the biggest ones that are going to kind of, I guess, shake up their team season? Like, which do you think is the biggest loss for their team?
Well, I'll answer that in 1 second. But interesting enough, right before we came on, the NFL released a statement saying how down injuries are this year. And I was fascinated. It was the most interesting time. So I have it on my phone so I can watch. They have the fewest number of concussions in practices and games, only 44, 44 since tracking began in 2015. So concussions way down, right? Nearly 50% reduction in concussions among players who wore the Guardian cap. Because remember, we did see one in a game, and I thought that was good. If you want to wear it, wear it. The lower extremity strains remain down by 25%. And I thought it's like 70% of kickoffs were returned in the preseason, with an injury rate returns decreasing by over 32%. So I find that interesting because it does seem like an injury-plagued year, and yet the numbers aren't there. And I think that goes back to your question, Liz. It's the big names. It's AJ Brown, who I'm still sitting on my bench in fantasy football, waiting for AJ Brown to come back. You have, now Rashee Rice. You have all of these players. Hollywood Brown still isn't there for the Chiefs. You have these bigger name players that you're just waiting. Christian McCaffrey, half the 49ers team. And so I think that's because there are some of these bigger names, we feel like it's bigger. But it looks like the numbers are actually kind of down, which is a good thing, right? Especially in concussions, because that was such a focus for them.
Shame about Tua though. Like, how long do we know what's going to go on with him? Like, and because it's his reactions to a concussion that's so scary. Like, they're very, well, you see it. It's not, I don't want to say it's not normal. I've watched rugby and all this kind of thing, and I've seen how concussion can work, but I've never seen the way that he reacts to it. So it's always such a shock.
Sorry, I muted. I forgot. It is. And I think Tua's in a little bit of the spotlight for the most part because he had those two back-to-back 2 years ago, then had a fine season, now came back. And the problematic thing with Tua, at least for me, was that hit didn't look like it should have caused a concussion. And we don't know. We don't know how violent it was. We don't know exactly how his neck was or whatever. But just to look at it, it looked like a normal hit. And I think that's what has thrown so many people off, is that they're like, that caused a concussion. We should be worried for the dude. I have no doubt in my mind he will not retire. He will continue to play. And so then it's going to be up to the coaches and that sort of thing. But it's just disturbing when you see someone do the posturing, and that's what that's called, is posturing, when their arms come up like this, because then that is basically a full shutdown of the brain. And so it's,
he did that 2 seasons ago as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When their fingers go splayed and they pull up. Yeah, that's what that is. And it's just so scary because that is what they call, it's the hidden injury. People know you have a concussion, but you don't know to the depth. You don't know to the extreme. You don't know how. And so that's so scary. Yeah. But it looks like what the NFL is trying to do is helping. And that's hopeful to me.
Yeah. Is that basically what is it the Guardians? Yeah. So I was so used to seeing those in practice, and I kept wondering, like, what are they? And then obviously I've seen them on the field with one of the players since the season started. So it's interesting.
And I loved that player's answer to that. He just was like, I have a family. I'm totally fine wearing this. I don't care if you think I look stupid. I'm going to be, in full functioning capacity at the end of my career. So
definitely. And Shona, what do you think? How do you think the team's going to cope with some of the biggest ones that they've lost? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think the 49ers are in a really tricky spot at the minute. And I've said this quite a few times on previous podcasts. What does Kyle Shanahan do to these players in training? There's got to be something, because every season, and it's not just with the 49ers, you've seen it with previous teams with him, they just have these massive injuries. So their report came out today. Their cornerback Isaac Yiadom is limited, and obviously George Kittle with his ribs, and then you've got Fred Warner with his ankle. I could go on and on and on with the 49ers injuries. They're actually the team I'm also which we're going to go on and talk about, that I am surprised that they haven't had the best start to the season. But yeah, they are in a very interesting position, because obviously they play the Cardinals this week, and then they also face Seahawks the following Thursday. So it's a very tight turnaround in their schedule without some of their star players when they're nursing injuries. So it will be interesting to see how they fare this week.
I agree. I think it's probably San Francisco, the Vikings. I'm going to say I would have thought it would have been them, but it sure hasn't been, right? But I think that the 49ers and the Dolphins are the ones that have seemed to have shown the most impact from their injuries. And that's obviously for Miami because of the quarterback situation. But even as Graham mentioned in chat, they lost Jalen Phillips, a huge part of their defense, and that's for the season. You know what I mean? And so they just had one hit after another. I think Armstead also, I don't know if Armstead's back. Graham, let me know if Armstead is back, but Armstead with all these players. And so they just, you can see the instant drop. And I think that's when, you know, there's certain players that an entire team is built around. Christian McCaffrey is without a question. And he has been Shanahan, I don't know how many times. He made it through the whole season last year. I was shocked, right? We knew he couldn't do it again. And in fact, in a couple of the fantasy football leagues I'm in, they were talking about not picking him up because there's no way he could do it 2 seasons in a row. What does that say? Like, that's sad, right? So yeah, I think that is, I think it's because of those big names that those 2 teams for sure have been struggling the most. So
yeah, I found it quite interesting as well because I was reading on ESPN the stats from the 49ers. They are ranked 26 in the NFL in third down conversions allowed, which worse than that is that their last and third and long conversions yielded 7 yards plus. It's pretty bad for their defense when they're known for being really hot on defense, you know. I'm like, I couldn't believe when I read that. I was like, I'm really shocked at that stats that they're that low down on the list for third down conversion,
because that's not who that team is, right? Yeah. And so it has been a huge change, and they're coming up against some serious cap issues next year. So I think that they understand their window is probably the last 3 years, and we're getting there. But we can talk about windows and them opening and closing later in the season for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's get into it in terms of the flops then, because there's been some, I think, surprising ones for sure. I mean, Shona, you mentioned it, so tell me how you're feeling about some of them.
I'm just surprised. Like I say, I'm just surprised. I mean, the Niners aren't terrible. Like, you know, they're still kind of ranked. Like, I would say, well, you know, how the ESPN always does the weekly ranking. They're ranked 9th. They've not moved. They're 2-2. They've kind of beat teams they should beat, and they've lost to teams that are quite surprising. That game against the Rams was like shocking. Like that was like a complete how do you say that word? Catapult? Whatever it is. They completely like basically dropped stumps and just completely lost their heads. But also Miami is an interesting one. I also think another interesting one is Eagles, who are now also 2-2. I don't know. It's it's not. That's not catastrophe, Graham. Thank you. It's like
he's helping. He's trying.
Catapulting. You know what I'm on about? Like
catapulting.
That's it.
Okay, there you go. You know, the interesting thing,
cut their own heads off to spite their nose.
Yeah, they 2 things in that Rams Niners game though. Divisional games, it's proof. Divisional games anything can happen in a divisional game. 2, once again, shows that when Shanahan thinks he's winning, he goes conservative, and the other teams take advantage of it. Happened in Super Bowls. It's happened over and over and over again. Yeah, I agree. You know, there's a couple of teams. I just want, for the record, over on the Our Turf podcast, I picked the Commanders to win their division, and look who's in first place right now. I'm just saying. I went with the hot take on that one. I knew that Dallas would be just a mess, and I didn't know about the Eagles without Jason Kelce. So I was like, and the Giants are the Giants. But so I don't know. It was real. I want credit for that for some reason. But if you look at teams that are underperforming, I would say Dallas for sure is one of them, although that seems to be kind of the norm for them. They're kind of a middle of the road team and have been, which is too bad because Dak is not a middle of the road quarterback. And so I think it has to do with the rest of the team around him. But my big thing right now is we need to stop trying to make sunshine happen. Down there in Jacksonville, and that's what we call Trevor Lawrence. For those of you guys who don't know, we call him Sunshine. this is not working. And they paid him because they thought it could work. But he and Doug Peterson just aren't meshing. That whole team is just kind of falling apart. For years, we're like, oh, this is the year. This is the year. Oh, we'll get to that question here in just a second, Graham. But this is the year, right? This year. Okay. Doug Peterson, sunshine. They're going to figure it out. Never happens. So frustrating. And then they'll have hot streaks and then they look absolutely like trash. It's just so frustrating to me. So that one drives me crazy. Something has to give there. And they just paid their quarterback. So I don't think it's going to be him.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely wasn't expecting to see that they were like, 0-4. That's definitely expecting them to be better than that.
For sure. Some of these others, though, the Packers, you can understand them being 2-2 because of Jordan Love being out for those couple of games. The Panthers, I don't think anyone expected them to be, rip roaring, but they're 1-3. They did win a game, so that is good. And then you look at the rest of them. This was interesting. The AFC West, to me, the Chiefs are 4-0. Shocker. The Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders are all 2-2. And I expected one of those teams to lag further behind than that. So that's actually impressive. It's the AFC North.
Yeah.
The Steelers are 3-1. The Ravens are 2-2. But the Browns and the Bengals are both 1-3. And what's interesting to me is I picked that as the toughest division in football this year. And it has not shown to be that way. It's just crazy. I don't know. Yes, it's true. So anyway, that one's really interesting to me. So back to Graham's question: are the Eagles' struggles more on Hurts or the head coach? It's always the head coach. I mean, you can put it on the quarterback, having troubles, but he's actually played somewhat well in some games. The coach has to be the one that makes those changes and fits their quarterback better. I would totally lay that on the head coach there. And both Kadeem and Graham said the Packers are 2-0 without Love. Yes, they are. But I think that has more to do with who they were playing. But I do think that Love is definitely the better of the two quarterbacks. Although good for Malik Willis, just rack another one up of just because he didn't work for one team doesn't mean he's not going to work for another. There's a huge list of those. So.
It's definitely interesting. And I guess we'll sort of see how the season comes on as we are only we've just started week 5, haven't we? So
isn't it nice though to see the Browns so low down? Sorry, no.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't really care about the Browns.
No, I want that quarterback to crash and burn. And I love that is what is happening. I think once they get their Nick Chubb back, I think that'll change.
Yeah, that he's obviously a big miss, but total sidestep, but like he appeared on an episode of Selling Sunset to buy a house in LA. I literally had to fast forward. I was like, I am not sitting here listening to this guy.
Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't clip that out, because if I would have clipped that out if I was.
They also had Johnny Manziel though, so I'm just like, what?
But they also had Joey Essex, so.
Apparently, they don't have high standards.
Yeah.
Two worst quarterbacks possible to feature in your show. I'm like, clearly you do not watch football or have any clue.
Yeah, the scrape of the barrel, especially if Joey Essex turned up. So
yeah, I did have to fast forward it because he had his girlfriend there as well. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we want to buy a house in LA." And I was like, "No."
Yeah, that's because he knows he's not going to be in the league for long. Anyway, we're going to move right. One thing though that we didn't mention that we were going to talk about, but I would like to, is the London games start this week. We get 8:00 in the morning football where I live, so I love that. I don't have to move all day. It's just like the best thing ever, for sure. And Liz, I noticed that you said you weren't going this year. That's so sad.
Weird. Yeah, it feels really weird. Obviously, I've been going now for 10 years. I've been going for as long as I've had this blog going and whatnot. So yeah, it feels weird. I've made peace with it. I'm okay, but it's the first time I'll be at home watching the London game. So I'll get comfy, get the snacks out.
Yeah,
I'm very fortunate to be there. We're all good.
yeah, get loads of snacks in and just chill.
Yeah,
fun. It is fun to go as well, but it is super
fun to go.
It's fun to go, but there are some games. There are some games I want to hear the commentary. I want to hear what the analysts are saying. There's some games that I really want to do. Other games, I'm like, it's just fun to be here. But like Graham just said, football at a reasonable time. God love you, Graham. I know he stays up for our Turf podcast. Sometimes I'm on duty. I stay up till 1 a.m. for that.
Out of the 3 games, Liz. No, Dayna. Sorry. I would say the Jets Vikings is one game I would want to hear the commentary for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
100%. 100% want to hear the
So
commentary.
what I'm trying to see, let's see. What is this week's game?
This week is Jets,
The Jets Vikings.
Yeah. The next Sunday is Jaguars Bears, which and then the third game is Patriots Jaguars.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. The Jags are staying 2 weeks.
This Sunday's the best game.
Well, it's interesting. The Jags staying for 2 weeks in a row. I think that's if they're going to do that, that's good. And so they might be better. They might be getting their wins this time. But yeah, sadly, I think it's going to be interesting for the Bears. Caleb Williams is as I've said, he's not my favorite rookie, but I also feel a little bad for him because he's stuck with Shane Waldron. That's a whole show in itself. But I do think it's good for him to get exposed to all of this stuff in his first year. So having to make that long flight and adjust and do all that stuff, that's good for a kid. They need to learn how to do that early. Yeah. And so that'll be good for him at that point. But you know what? It's also exciting because Chicago hasn't been there in a while, have they? I think it's been a minute since the Bears have been there. So that'll be really fun. That'll be good for those fan bases. And then next year, didn't they say they're doing a game in Madrid next year? I can't get over that. There's just so many
practically the stadium is basically a replica, in my opinion, of the Tottenham Stadium in terms of the retractable pitch. But I'd go to that. Bit of sunshine.
Yeah, I would too. And there's a good chance Seattle might have an international game next year. They do. Dayna will be there. So that's just the fun of it. So for sure.
Do you actually have another curveball to speak about? And that would be Sean Payton at the Broncos, Dayna, your favorite man.
I hate him so much.
The fact that Drew Brees had to come out and be like to Bo Nix, oh, you just have to be demanding as him. No kid should have to be demanding as their head coach.
Yeah.
I have to zen when it comes to that, man. I literally have never disliked. I didn't even dislike Bill Belichick this much. I thought Bill Belichick was a grumpy old man, and so he was annoying. Sean Payton, he's a terror. So yeah, but you know what? They've won 2 games. They are starting to look better, and good for Bo Nix. For him to be able to kind of, I don't know, evolve. I just
no,
can't.
But he is. I feel so sorry for him because he's either at or near the bottom of any of the league's major metrics after 4 games. Yeah. And that has got to be like, and then Sean Payton comes out and is like, I'm so confident in him. And you're like, well, to be honest, that's like, somebody being confident in a chocolate fire guard. Like, it's not going to be that.
Right. The thing of it is too, is that I've talked about this. This is my 4th podcast this week. So for anyone who's listening, if I repeat myself, I apologize. But I think one of the interesting things that we're seeing this year is that we're seeing where maybe some of these rookie quarterbacks do need to sit. They need to sit for a minute. Maybe I just think of how good Patrick Mahomes, it was for Patrick Mahomes to sit behind Alex Smith for that year. You see, Love came right out running after sitting behind, Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers wasn't helpful in any way, but it was just good for him to learn the system. I think that's good. I'm wondering if in any way, shape, or form, we've seen how it's not worked for Zach Wilson. We were seeing how it's not worked for some of these other. CJ Stroud came out a running, and good for him because there's always going to be those players. But then you look at Bryce Young, and that kid should have sat behind someone for at least a year. And now maybe he'll learn a couple of things because they're doing it this second year. I just really think that there could be a shift back again, that if you don't have a CJ Stroud or the super top, or even a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, who's playing so much better than Williams, which makes me happy. I think that those guys are going to start to sit, and they're going to sit and learn a little bit. And I think that would have greatly benefited Bo Nix because he's learning on the job, and you get overly critical of players who are learning on the job. So,
yeah. Be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ladies, is there anything else we want to talk about, or shall we wrap it?
Well, next just needs to be a new head coach.
There's that.
That's the answer. That's the correct answer. Right there.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for everyone who's joined. We will be back not Monday next week, the Monday after. 6:30 UK time, 1:30 Eastern. So yeah, make sure you subscribe. But until next time, thanks for joining.